Welcome back to my channel, guys. It's time for another anime review. Welcome once again, guys. And I don't even know if this video will be in August or September. I think it's pretty. It's still August when this video will be releasing. But this will be on an anime that released back in May. It is Time Patrol Bond, or TP Bond is how it comes out in Netflix. So it just depends how you look it up is how it'll show up. But the original series is called Time Patrol Bond. And like I said, it released in Netflix. Let me get the right date. It released in Netflix 2024. Yeah, this May. So it's been a while since it released. Um, this anime is it's the first of its own anime. There was a film that released in '89, and the original manga is from '78 to '86. I will say what I'll review of it, which I won't be a lot of reviewing to be honest, going in detail because the story doesn't really follow along too much. But I will explain how it connects to, just 1980s and stuff like that. That mindset completely different to now. So, before anything, guys, if you haven't done so by now, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Give some love by commenting, liking, and sharing. I'm trying my best to release as many stuff in the summer, so that's why a lot of these videos are pre-recorded. The only ones that weren't pre-recorded were the first impression videos that were released back in July, but everything else. It's pre-recorded, so usually summer is tougher for me to post, but I got ahead of the game back in May, and now it's June, and I'm almost done here at summer school. So I'm glad that I've been able to post more and more. So please do subscribe, like the videos, comment. I'm trying my best to be very proactive with comments at the very least. So, um, okay, so the episodes themselves, I think first and last episode are the ones that if you don't watch them in that sequence, being the first and the last episode, then you probably be lost. But everything else, episode 2 through 11, pretty much you can watch in any order. And it's one of those series, like I said, back in the day where stuff didn't maybe per se have a sequence. Um, it did, but it didn't because, again, there's no streaming. So there's no like bench watching or anything like that. So you had people who would watch an episode 1 week and maybe miss an episode. So you had to create series that even if you miss one episode, you still would be able to catch on to the series. That's why in the '90s, again, still no streaming there, but in the '90s when Dragon Ball and all those bigger animes that most of you guys know about, they had recaps that were pretty long for the same reason because people maybe sometimes would miss an episode or two and they needed to know that what's going on in the episode. So when stories started being more sequential where you had to almost watch every single episode back to back, they started putting recaps so that it made sense. Right nowadays, recaps are not a thing for every single anime, even if they're sequential animes. Some of the bigger animes still do it because that's just the format they started with, and they just continue with it. But even One Piece has kind of gone away from recaps so much. The only time they use it is because they want to fill in space into an episode that might be not as long. But yeah, so this series, like I said, episode 2 to 11, you can almost watch in no sequence whatsoever and still be okay with it. Essentially, it follows the story of a boy who, um, he, Bond, his name is Bond. He is, he, he ends up being in a mess with Reem, who is a time traveler. She's a time patrol. She basically goes into the past and changes the past a little bit for certain people so that they don't die, so that they can just have a longer life. Now she only helps people that are not important to history. Because if you change someone's life that's important to history, like let's say Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, then that can cause a huge change in the world and what the world is now. So Bond ends up falling into trouble in the first episode, and they're gonna erase him from history to kind of fix the problem. But then they find out that Bond actually is important to history, so they end up making Bond a time patrol. So he starts being apprenticed with Reem in episode two, and essentially he starts going to back in space, fixing problems. And we see stuff like the pyramids being built for a tomb. We see stuff like witch hunts. We see stuff like the story of the white dragon, which ends up being almost them. Um, the battlefield. Oh, that one's is such a heart wrenching because you start noticing like it affects Bond's mindset of like if we're going to an era and this is a battlefield where the Japanese were fighting still and they were losing, and I think this is the 1940s. Um, they they were willing to die, 16, 17-year-old boys willing to die in airplanes as long as it killed at least one or two Americans. So he goes back and saves one of those people, and it's heart wrenching just to see history like that. They go on a vacation at some point to see dinosaurs. um, they they do different travels in like the old western and stuff like that where they have to like even change their looks. I think when they go to Greece, they change his look. Also in the western, they change his look. So there's like just a lot of eras, a lot of episodes they go to. They do go back in time in Japan itself as well, where he sees the era of I think it's the era of where there was the emperors were just starting. So there's just a lot of eras they go to, and not just Japan, but just around the world, like Egypt and like I said, U.S. and um, uh, well, I guess those are the main ones to be honest. So yeah, it's really interesting. Personally, it's more of a kids show. I will say that. I feel like this one, um, the rating is given, I believe, is um, PG for kids. So I'm not really finding a rating here, but I believe it's a PG because there's not a lot of. I mean, other than the talk of death maybe and war, I would say kids would enjoy this one more than adults. The last episode, like I said, it's a little bit of important of a sequence because it does end in a note where the girl basically is promoted and they kind of have to go their own ways. So it is kind of important to see it that way because they do end up separating at the end. And it is the only time they go into the future, which they explain how they shouldn't be going into the future because it can cause a big ripple, blah blah blah. So yeah, that's what ended up happening. So it is a pretty interesting series in none the least, especially the mindset of what the future was going to look like and what the future was going to be. I do realize they still kind of add some of the contemporary views because it is still being written and made for people nowadays. But still, there is some themes like stuff was going to change and mindsets were going to change, and not everything went by what they thought was going to happen. So, really, really enjoyed it. Go check it out on Netflix. 12 episodes. They're already all out. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you haven't done so by now, subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. And like always, guys, don't be strangers. See you guys.